Hello my friends, it's Mark the Southern Cadman, today with something different for you. I am in the process of replacing a rear flat filler on a bumper of a Brougham. Any of you who have fixed these cars up no doubt have run across this issue before. The flat filler was one of the first ones to break, and this one surprisingly is original. But I have already replaced the other fillers on the car, and it didn't occur to me to take any video until I just got around to this part. So we will go over this, and for those of you who don't know how to do it, maybe this will help save you some time and aggravation. The surprising thing about this one is it is still the original one, the original urethane material from 1987 in this case. And it's actually still pliable. So it's obviously cracked, it's no good, needs to be replaced, but if you look, it actually still has some flexibility to it, which is a little surprising. But it needs to go. It's kind of a tricky one to replace in a way. You'd think it would just slide out or snap in or something like that, but you actually have to remove the back of the bumper to do it. And I'm actually having to voice over this video because my microphone wasn't working when I when I was recording it. So here I'm actually showing the piece that I'm going to be installing. This is a piece that I actually made, and I did that because of the options that are out there. Here I'm trying to show you the color match. They're supposed to be light gray, kind of a satiny finish. They're not supposed to be high gloss, although, you know, they look good in high gloss. Doesn't matter as long as the color's right to me. But they come in a couple different. You can get a couple different ones if you order one online. They make them out of ABS, pretty much in one form or another. It's an ABS that they're offering, but I'll go over those later on in the video. Here you can see the 16 bolts that remove that back plate. Some kind of an alloy, aluminum alloy plate that has to come off before you can get to that back filler. If you see the studs right there on either side that mount, those actually only mount to the plate, and the plate mounts to the chrome part of the bumper. Here I'm showing you the tricky one. That's the one that's easy to forget about on either side, but basically it's 13 millimeters, and just to remove all of those, and that whole back plate will come off. So hopefully you have an impact that'll save you a whole lot of time. But 13 millimeter, and the threaded part is actually a nut plate. So the nut plates are really bad to break. So I've had one time I replaced this filler, and almost every single nut plate broke. But you can get new ones. They're not a big deal. You can get them in Napa. Just take one of the old ones with you. Here I've got the whole thing off, and I'm going to show you kind of how you have to tilt it a little bit to get it out of the way. It'll catch on that little bit right there. So just sort of pick it up and slide it off. That's a little, just a rub strip that goes between the back plate and the chrome part of the bumper to keep it from scratching during vibration, as you're going down the road, and causing rust. So that's me moving that back plate out of the way, giving you access to the inside of the bumper. Those are going to fall off. I'm just kind of explaining there how when they fall off, it's not difficult to figure out where they went. So you can see the nut plate there. Those are the things that are real prone to break at the 180, and sure enough, one of these broke. Not a big deal. You just get the correct thread size, go to Napa and take your bolt with you, make sure you got the right thread size, and just snap a new one on right there. I'm showing you. That's how you do it. You take your thumb and you just press it on. I actually do that later on. I had one with me. I was able to find one in the drawer. So you'll see how that goes on if you don't know. But that just gives you the threads. Otherwise, the screw or the bolt's not going to go anywhere. So those bumpers are kind of like a box. When you have that back plate on there, it traps moisture, so you get a lot of that scale. This one's, you can see how they can eventually rust through from the inside out. So here I'm getting ready to tell you how to take this thing off. There's a trim ring a chrome trim ring, and I'm pointing to the studs of it. I think there's 6 little 10 millimeter speed nuts that fasten to those studs holding that chrome trim on. And so the easiest way to get those off is with a, 1/4 inch extension, or excuse me, a 1/4 inch ratchet with a deep well, or in this case, a 3/8 ratchet. So just take each one of those off, and I'm sure I'm going to skip ahead here. No one wants to see me do this. And once you get those off, that whole trim ring comes off quite easily. And there's the little speed nut. 6 of them. Okay, I'm back on the other side, and once you've got those nuts off, you will see how easily that trim ring comes straight off. Try to bring it all directly straight up, because it's just pot metal. If you get it in a bind, you can certainly break it. I mean, it's not fragile or anything, but just lift it straight off out of those holes. That's your best bet. And at this point, the old filler will just slide right out, and I think there's still enough of it there for you to see the shape. When you compare it to the replacement one I'm putting in, you can kind of see where that comes from. Part of it slides in between. There's like a recess there, and the flange just kind of slides up underneath. And here take a minute to clean that up. Okay, yeah, anytime you get into something like this, you want to get the old leaves, dirt, and crud out of there, because all that stuff's just going to get wet, and it'll can potentially cause rust. But here you can see how that trim ring goes down in, right through the holes on the filler. So, yeah, that's what's left of the original filler. I don't know what I'm talking about here. I'm probably talking about how if you find a new one, well, you won't find a new one. You're not going to find a new old stock rear flat filler, and if you did, I wouldn't trust it. It's not worth the time to to put an old one on. But once it's on the car, it appears to be totally flat, and that's important for reasons I will explain in just a few minutes here. And here I'm going to fit the well, I guess I'm showing how the old one goes on. It does have a little bull nose on the back side. It's not important at all. You'll never see the back of it. It slides up under the other filler, which goes directly into the license plate. And you'll see that at the end of the video. I'm pointing at that saying, that's a bad filler. Okay, yeah, that little lip right there is going to be important later on when I'm explaining that little recess, when I'm explaining the options of replacements. The original urethane filler actually had a taper to it where the holes slid up into that recess, and that's something that the replacement fillers don't have, and it's tricky because it has to be thin enough to get up in there, otherwise you're going to be really frustrated. Ask me how I know. That's a replacement you can get. That's just an ABS, totally flat filler. It's got like a stippled finish on it, which is not correct. You want that to be smooth. Although I do like the unleaded fuel only sticker. That's a nice touch. But I haven't used that one, obviously, and I don't plan to because I don't feel like sanding it down. That's a homemade filler someone else put on a car I had. It's actually metal. Not bad. They held it on with epoxy. If you could see right there, that black stuff. And it did well. In fact, maybe I'll even try that at some point. But this is my filler. Again, it just has to be flat. So since I mess with these cars so much, I actually used a material that I got at Lowe's. It's a pebble board that goes in tubs. Obviously meant to be wet. So I used the back side of it, sanded it flat, finish sanded it and everything, primed it, sprayed it with the silver paint, and in this case I used a satin clear to give it the original finish, similar to the original stuff. and it's thin enough to slide up into that recess without any trouble. And I bought one sheet of that stuff, and it'll probably allow me to make 50 of those. And there you can see it's probably familiar to you, something you might see in a shower. But it's pretty tough. It's similar to a PVC, so pretty durable stuff. I guess time will tell ultimately, but impervious to water and all that stuff. And obviously the painted side is going to be showing out, so you have that protective surface as well. But there's how it fits in. You can see all the holes lining up. And what's going to happen now is you just take the trim ring and simply push it down through. Just want to make sure it's even. But it's not rocket science. And you don't need the bull nose. You don't need the shape of the original one. And at the end, I'll show you what the options are again. Can't imagine what I'm talking about. Okay, here's the trim ring going back on. The studs on the back of it just push down through the holes, as you see. And then here's me tightening up those 10 millimeter speed nuts on the back. That piece of foam a lot of times will dry up and blow off. You can see it right between the filler and the bumper. It's I guess it's worth putting on. I'm trying to think if it's usually missing. It tends to be there, but if it is gone, it might not be a bad idea to take a strip of weather strip, stick on stuff, because it keeps everything level and keep it from rattling around. And then again, you can see the scale inside that bumper. That's just a moisture trap in there. This bumper's actually very solid. It's just scale on the inside that you'll never see. And actually vacuumed all that out before putting it back together. And there's kind of what you're going to be looking at with the trim ring over the new filler. What a difference that one makes. If you guys want to see more videos like this where you kind of, well, I mean, there's just certain things I do over and over again because the same thing goes bad on all these cars. But if you want to see more of these videos, let me know. I plan to do one about replacing the quarter fillers and then the gas door filler that's actually attached to the back body. Okay, here is the speed nut I was talking about. As simple as this. That's the one that came from Napa, the new one in my hand. And it just literally slides over the edge of the bumper, snaps into place, and gives you threads for your bolt to bite into. And they're in the section where all the push clips and all that stuff are, and they're ridiculously expensive. It's like $8.99 for a bag of them. A bag of like 10, which is crazy. But what are you going to do? And there's the back plate back in place. One thing that's cool is you can kind of see, where the nuts or where the washers were on those bolts. It gives you a guide to getting this all back together right in the same position. And the reason that's important, again, is because those studs come out of that back plate. So if you can get the bolts exactly where they were, then the studs are going to be in the exact same place too. I tend to start them by hand just to make sure they don't cross thread, although they are tapered bolts, so it's really not a big concern. Yeah, don't forget those things, which I almost did. It also helps to protect against dissimilar metal corrosion. That can happen. There's my Rode microphone that wasn't working apparently. I wonder if I had the wrong part plugged in. And again, just get those finger tight. And I tend to start in the middle. If I can anchor one right down, right over the old scar, the dirt, the outline of where it was, that kind of gives me a chance to get them all right. Again, start in the middle and move your way, work out. Don't start on one end, because if it's off a little each bolt, you might wind up way off by the time you get to the end. probably explaining that right here. Definitely recommend an impact. Although I've done this with just a ratchet. It just takes a while. Yep. Sorry, no sound. Okay, all done. And that's the other thing, your shims. When you take the bumper off, try to keep track of those shims, because from the factory they were put on to make everything level and all the gaps correct. So if you can remember where they go, if they happen to fall off, you'll be better off. Yeah, it looks good. Bumper needs to be cleaned up, but came out nicely. And here's where it's going to go. As you can see, I've already done the other fillers, the quarter panel fillers, and there's that gas door filler, which is held on by all screws, Phillips head screws, believe it or not. These are the tricky ones. I use the injection molded type. It's fairly cold out today, so they're not super pliable. But I really prefer those over the ABS. They tend to hold their shape. You can use the original hardware, and they tend to take shape better. But when you're going to put this thing back on, what I use is a floor jack with a crossbar to kind of give it some stability. I'm usually working alone, so that helps me keep it under control as it goes forward. You can kind of monitor the studs as they go into the plate. Here I'm explaining what that bull nose does. It just kind of hangs off the edge on the underside, so you'll never see it. So it's superfluous. The only time you would ever see that is if you're actually underneath the car, standing around where the gas tank is.
Here's what the final product looks like.
Here it is back on the car, and you can see there why it doesn't matter.
Back in place.
I'll tell you, these things will fight you.
Those polypropylene fillers are my favorite for sure.
So anything you do,
here's where you can see it just doesn't make any difference. The bull nose is going to be underneath that
help you
gas door filler, so
do your
completely out of sight.
Favor.
But that's the story on
shims,
on how to do that particular one.
You want these gaps.
Since I had all of my shims,
as you can see, this is my.
And I knew where they all went. The bumper went back on just like it came off. Although they don't always do that. Sometimes you got to really tinker with it.
I actually think it looks better than what I've been able to
adjustment.
find.
Correct. I've spent as much as 2 hours
show you the
adjusting a bumper in the past.
that are available real quick.
Here are the options.
Here they are.
Okay.
That's
the one I showed you earlier in the video. That's the flat
ABS
ABS one that has like a stippled finish.
It's got a
if I just had to buy one, I'd
texture to
probably
it,
grab that
which
one.
I would want to sand slick.
Just sand it down smooth. You'd lose the
ABS.
well, maybe you could save the unleaded fuel sticker, but
holes punched out in the right places.
This is the molded
that's the
one I was telling you about.
This one here is
the
the
one
ABS one based on
molded
the
after
original.
one of the
So
original
it's actually
ones
got the bull
with
nose on it,
rollover
which you might think, oh yeah, that's
bull
great.
nose right there.
But if you
Here's
look
the problem
at
with this piece.
If you look at it,
what I'm trying to show here is there's a.
If you can see it or not.
It's not flat.
Not
you can kind of see right in the middle of it. It's got a raised
ridge
spot.
in the middle of it. It's got a lot of.
And even apart from that, it
texture
just
to it.
has a wavy
Just not
surface.
smooth.
You
It
would
would
have
take
to block
lot of
sand that
effort
thing
to
down.
to make that
Number
slick.
one, you'd have to wind up blocking it down
The problem with
smooth.
these
And then number
this
two,
area
that
here
part
is
that
too
slides
thick
into the recess is always
get
too thick.
into its place.
So you're going to wind up having to shave that down with a
cutting
Dremel tool or
away
something to
the
get it to go
hole,
in. And you would tinker
or
with it,
taking a
tinker with
Dremel
it.
tool and
And at
shaving
the end of the
this down
day,
thin enough to get in there.
even if you got that piece and
since
put it
has
on,
this little
it would look no
line,
different than the first
You'll
one.
have to get it in there just
totally flat.
at the right depth.
So I don't like that at all. That just came with a car I bought.
I showed you this before. This was
Of course,
a
there's
homemade piece.
the metal one
there
someone
with
made.
epoxy.
And the next one, of course, is
And here's
my own creation, which is what I
piece
prefer.
out of, the
And
pebble
I'll make
board.
these things.
I've had
I'll
success
do
with
4 or
these.
5 of them at a time.
you can sand it to a nice
I
smooth
do
finish.
so many of these
Takes
cars.
paint
But
well.
anyway, I hope this helps you.
That it's very durable if they put it in showers.
It's a little bit of a tedious
So,
process getting these fillers
suppose-
back on, but what a difference it makes.
you'd
on
have
these
to,
cars. They just look
be doing a
sad
lot of these to
when
justify
they have bad fillers.
and all that.
So when you get these things all
I guess
freshened
of
up,
everything you
you
can
got them
buy,
painted to match.
This is
And,
the one I would get.
you've got the right color paint on the
None of
flat
this sells it,
filler.
but just look for the one that's
It's,
totally
it's
flat.
what separates from the men from the
You'll
boys.
thank me later.
All right, take care.